Wake up! I'm Doug and this is the Taste and Sensibility channel. And today we are looking at two specialty coffees from Vietnam. So before we look at maps and have all that fun, I'm going to pour the first one and get it cooling down. So there's 2 cups of a specialty Arabica coffee from the highlands of Vietnam. And then, with a much greater opportunity to spill, I'm pouring out of a spotless travel mug. And I spilled, but that was hidden. You didn't see that. And let me clear out the middle here. And we'll get on to the map to show where in Vietnam this comes from. Which is hard to do with my favorite resource, Coffee Obsession, a book by Annette Maldrer. But here's the page on Vietnam. It goes through all the coffee growing regions and how much of different types they produce, and it says 95% Robusta, 5% Arabica, and points out different regions in the country. And I believe our coffee today comes from up here, but it's kind of hard to prove. But let me move on to Google Maps. And I'll give my sob story about why it's so hard to figure this out. So the label on the beans, the unroasted beans that I bought, says Delot, Highlands, and it also says Annam Mountains or Annam Highlands. So you look up Delot and it's a city and a region and a travel destination down here in the south. Country goes all the way up here. This is kind of squiggly wormy thing. And so one choice is down here in the south, but another search on the Annam Mountains or Annam Highlands turns up the Annamite mountain range, which is mostly in Laos, but part of it kind of flops over the border into Vietnam, and the eastern side of the mountain range is in Vietnam. So this is also a choice. And then I've got some other maps. Because this one is good because they show Arabica growing regions in dark green, blotches, trees, forests, and then they show lighter green for Robusta growing regions. So everything down here pretty much is light green, except for this one little blob, which is not exactly where Delot was. But you go up here and everything's dark green. So this is the good Arabica growing region, and the Robusta is growing right next to it from this particular grower and supplier, vendor. So that's my choice. It's way up here in the northern highlands. Maybe more geography than you wanted to see. So now Arabica over here. And here are the beans that I roasted. And they are kind of dark and oily, and they've been resting for a while since I made it. And over here is the Arabica. And these are peaberry Arabica, and they are the biggest beans I've ever seen, roasted or unroasted. But they got bigger when I roasted. These are fairly dark, but not oily, They did not hit second crack, and we're going to taste both of them today. So these coffees are both from Lens Coffee, which is the U.S. retail part of Indochina States, I think is the company that does all the Vietnamese part of growing, collecting, and exporting. So the Arabica, I'm expecting just from the roast to be a little bit darker, deeper, richer. Wow, it's hard to tell on the nose. I'm not getting sweet. I'm not getting fruity. I would probably guess coffee. I'm not getting lots of the normal deep dark things that tells me it's coffee. So pretty interesting. What's going on here? I'm gonna have to taste it. Wow. There is kind of a fruitiness on the palate, but it is vague. Certainly not sweet. Might be more like dried fruits. More like raisins or dates. Without the sweetness, without the sugary component. Dates have a lot of sugar, but they have all those dark fruit tones also. And wow, the earthiness is more compact and smaller than I would have guessed. It's a clean, compact earthiness. It's not just a big muddy base. It's right in the middle. I'm not sure there's cocoa. So I don't know what it is that makes up most of the flavor here, but it's very hard to describe with the notes that I've got so far. There is kind of a sweetness to it. Kind of this blob in the middle. I'm not getting a whole lot on the nose still. Where I usually get sweetness or floral or fruit. On Central American coffees, nothing there. But when you taste it, there's no high notes of fruit or sweetness, but there's a deep, rich, caramely, dark fruit type sweetness right in the middle. But it's mixed in with everything else, partially obscured, hard to tell. Now I'm looking for cocoa. Or what kind of earthiness, or is it... What's going on here? This is hard to decipher. But very good, delicious. It is just a different set of flavors than I'm used to. A different combination. So wow, it's going fast. It's a good, solid, high quality coffee. There's just a tiny hint of bitterness at on the finish. It might be more of a cocoa note than harsh treatment of the beans or something that went wrong with the roasting or with the processing. Wow, yeah, there's the fruitiness might be coming out a little bit more and a little bit more as I go through it. Wow. It's smooth and velvety. Different mouthfeel than most of the Central American coffees, South American things that I get. Theirs. It's just different, smoother, softer, something you notice. So that's hard to describe also, because I don't usually get all that many differences in mouthfeel. And this is automatic drip coffee brewing through a paper filter, which would often catch some of the oils and not let any sediment through. So, very good, very different. I'm just totally befuddled in how to describe all the things I'm getting here. But it's way to the darker side, way to the deeper side, savory side. But it's not muddy, it's not all that earthy. There's not a lot of cocoa. There are hints of cocoa in dark chocolate. And hints of the bitterness of the dark chocolate. But it is not a big, strong note in here. Very interesting. Yep, I'm getting more and more fruit as it cools down. It's a fruitier thing. And there's less of the earthiness, less of the cocoa. This is wonderful. It's good. So you can buy this from Lens, roasted or unroasted. And I'll have a link down to their website down below. Now let's move over to the Arabica side. which is all over the little tablecloth here. So this is grown in the same region as the Delat, Bourbon, Arabica. And this is claimed to be pea berry, and the beans are all very round. Different shades of olive, dusty, and lighter greens. Maybe even like a pea green. Also from the Delat Annam highlands in Vietnam. And this is grown in a higher region than most Robusta is usually grown. So it ends up with better characteristics, much more like Arabicas. Oh, different nose here than the Arabica have for sure. There's kind of a more tart. More tart. Oh, it went away. Okay, now I'm not getting very much. And on a very cool cup of coffee, the palate says there's a deep earthiness. There's a vegetal note that's interesting and different, and I haven't had it pop up before. It's not like stems and wood or anything like that. It's a hint of some interesting plants, but I don't know what it is because I don't eat all that many novel, interesting plants. Wow, just a whole range of different flavors that I'm not used to. And I've had this several times. This was a big full bag, and I've been drinking it with friends, and we can't, different words come out of our mouths every time. Mostly because it's lack of familiarity. It's so different than what we're used to. This is I'd say it's totally devoid of fruitiness. I'm not getting even dark fruits. It doesn't have a lot of sweetness, but the base, the middle, is this nice compact ball of flavor that's got earthiness and some cocoa notes. There's a vague sweetness to it. It's caramely or brown sugar, but it's faint, subtle, hidden, nuanced. Wow. And that vegetal note popped out close to the end, almost on the finish, which is, I don't know what to call it. Some plant I'm unfamiliar with. And no bitterness. There's a hint of bitterness over here, and I'm not getting the equivalent on this one. And I have another coolish cup to drink. So this is very interesting, getting all these odd and unfamiliar flavors. This is way to the savory side, way to the earthy side, way away from acid or sweetness. Pulling out savory notes might be a big, long, involved exercise, where it might be something like a meat broth. Something with spices that cooked all day. Wow. Just so different. Good, delicious. Both of these seem to be very high quality, well grown, well processed, and but roasted in a very amateurish way. And I am enjoying it, both of them. And I've got the 3-pound bag, so I can do plenty more exploring. I think the prices were something like $26 for the 3-pound bag of Arabica and $22 for the 3-pound bag of Robusta, unroasted beans. And I think you'll be paying a little bit more if you buy the things roasted. just very good. I'm usually able to talk and ramble on and on about things, but this is leaving me quiet and speechless because of the odd flavors that I'm getting here and don't know how to describe. So I'll just quit and go on to the next topic, which is brewing coffee in a Phin filter, which is a Vietnamese little gadget. Okay, I'm back to demonstrate the Phin filter brewing, which is a Vietnamese device, which has what, four parts. All these are stainless steel, so they're dishwasher safe. And I bought this from Lynn's Coffee for $4.95, so $5 for this very durable coffee brewer. And then there's a larger one. This supposedly makes like 5-ounce cups. This is about 3 times bigger. Everything's bigger, everything's stainless steel, same parts. And this was $9 for the bigger size. So the idea is that this is the brewing chamber. There's a little support, a strainer that holds it over the cup. This has holes in it. This has holes in it. So the coffee, ground coffee, goes in here, ground to the right size. Then there's a little pad that sits on top, and that flattens it out and slows the flow of the water through. It's got holes in it. You pour the water in, and supposedly it just passes through in 4 minutes or so. And then this is a lid to hold the heat in. It's also a little saucer to hold this on the side. And keeps from making a mess, and then you can pour it out as, you know, a little bit more drains out. And this goes over here. So all that sits away, sits over there, and you've got your coffee. So I'm going to pour some hot water through it to get it ready to pre-warm the cup and to pre-warm the device. The instructions for this give a water temperature of maybe 180 to 185, 190 degrees F. So I think my water has cooled off from the electric kettle a little bit more than normal. So I am pouring this in pretty fast. And it's passing right through. It doesn't have the top strainer. This bottom thing is not emptying. Okay, so I see how it slows down. Oh, should have showed you one other thing I discovered that I might be using as a feature. And that is that the holes are not identical. There are alignments between the holes here where every hole is lit up. I can see the light from every hole in a certain orientation. And then you can pass through lots of little, I mean, it looks like a kaleidoscope almost. So you can see fireworks going off as different rows of holes open up. So some close off most of the holes, some alignments, and then other alignments can open up every hole. So I think if you mark, and this was not explained in any of the instructions, but I think you can probably hold the coffee and water in the chamber for the 4-minute brewing time that we're shooting for with a mostly closed alignment. I've got one here. I marked it on here. So I've got a closed position, and I have an open position that will let the coffee flow through faster. And I'm going to go ahead and use that for this demonstration, just because I'm afraid if I just use random things, it's just going to pass through too quickly. We'll see. So I'm going to dump out the hot water that pre-warmed everything into a dump cup. And now I'm going to put in 11 grams of coffee, which is too much for this tiny little device. I was expecting to pass through quickly. I'm leveling that out. I'm spinning this little plate on top. It's cut holes. It looks level. I'm lined up on my closed position. And now I'm going to go ahead and pour in the water, hopefully close to the right temperature. So I'm filling up this whole chamber up to the top. Here we go. A few little grounds came out. But I am now putting the lid on it. Ooh, no, should have done a little soak first, a little bloom, but I didn't. It's pretty fresh coffee. It needs to bloom. So put in maybe a fourth or a third of your water first. Let it bloom for 20-30 seconds and then put it back in. So I'm on the closed setting and I can tell it's going down. This might be faster than 4 minutes. So as usual, you adjust the flow through time by using a smaller grind size. I need to go to a finer grind. But there's more coffee than the instructions asked for 7 grams, but they didn't say, they said sort of fine. So there's plenty of variables to play with. So half the water is still in there. And I can hear it dripping in. While we're waiting for that to happen, I can point out a couple of pages in this book, Coffee Obsession by Annette Moldwehr. I point out every single time, but they have a page on Phin filter brewing and describe it all. And they also have one of the Vietnamese coffee drinks. This one is iced coffee, and it's a name I'm not even going to try to say. Soi Da. Cafe Soi Da. So I'm sure I'm wrong on all that, but it uses sweetened condensed milk. And I think you're dripping this over ice and then adding the milk after. So these things are described in lots of places, including Coffee Obsession. So let me take a peek. I think there's still water in there. Yeah. And I didn't bring a timer anyway, so this is going a little faster than the 4 minutes we're shooting for, I think. So you can tell I am by no means an expert on this method. I've done it a couple times in the small one, a couple times in the big one. It's interesting, it works. It tastes like coffee. And it's very self-contained. Doesn't use any paper filters. Dishwasher safe stainless steel, so it just goes right into the dishwasher for cleanup. It's got little plastic handles if you need to pick up the whole thing. So what am I seeing? I'm seeing very little solids on this little saucer that holds it over the cup. I'm seeing, yeah, that looks like all the water has gone through. So now let me try to put this together in the right order. I'm going to turn this over in the saucer configuration. Are we getting drips still? Not much. So I'm going to put that over here. There's very little water here. Ooh, this is warm. Yeah, it doesn't really have any coffee in it. So I'm going to set that on top. So here's the hot coffee that was just brewed. It's not very much. Man, I poured a lot of water in. This is like 4 or 5 ounces. Smells great. Smells great. It's still hot. The whole cup is hot. But it makes a very small amount. So this is the Arabica because that was the last thing in my grinder. I just didn't want to flush it with anything new. So I used the Vietnamese Arabica. The Delat Highlands Arabica from the review we just did. Very warm, a little on the weak side. Wow. And the mouthfeel is more rich, more buttery, more oily, velvety. It has not gone through a paper filter, so it's going to leave all those oils in there. Wow. It's got most of the taste that I had in my automatic drip brew, and then it's just got this silky velvet. Those are two separate things. And hard to describe mouthfeel because of the oils that are still there. This coffee's been in contact with the grounds the whole time, so all the oils are still there, and wow, contributing to a whole different mouthfeel. It doesn't taste muddy or sedimenty. I'm not getting the muddy feel, I'm just getting the oils. So wow, that is a great way to make this coffee, great way to taste it. So I'll be doing some of those experiments with the sweetened condensed milk, both hot and cold, to try out a few of these Vietnamese recipes. So let me remind you to like the video down below, leave a comment or question, subscribe to the channel, and click that bell to get notified when the new reviews come out. And there's a lot more on the way. We're going to go through all those Indian Ocean islands with strange names and strange shapes, and check out 4 or 5 more coffees down there. So come back for that. Cheers.